Well, hello everybody. How are you? It's me, Mitch, and first order of business is I think I may have a technical problem, so what's new? I need somebody to tell me how my volume is, if my mic volume is loud enough. So I'll wait for the delay until you all hear it. And Boyd says, uh-oh, whatever that means. Loud and clear. Good. Volume is good. Okay. That's good because for some reason it looked like I was not getting the levels that I was getting when I set this up about an hour and a half ago. So as long as you can hear me, we don't have to do too many fancy things. They say the picture is good. Well, that's great. That's great. Glad to hear that. Uh, yeah, I need things to go smooth tonight. things things haven't been that smooth here over the past week. And those of you that have been watching my videos and following the chat will know that I have stirred up some controversy. And we got to put a stop to that before they turn into the next crusades, if you know what I mean. So my disclaimer, of course, at first is I'm not a doctor. Don't give medical advice. I tell you what I do for myself, how it's worked, what it's done to me. And I give you my opinions on some things, but basically it's not my job to tell you what to do, just show you what I do. And that's all we do. So there are a lot of doctors out there. If you want somebody to analyze your blood test numbers for you, I'm afraid that's not me. wanted to make or discuss rather than make an announcement. It says I got 62 people in here now, and so not a whole lot of people are going to hear this. By the time this live stream gets old and dies on the replays, maybe it'll get tops 1,500. Sometimes I get a couple thousand views on it. But that means that even when I put out a video, if I have 30,000 subscribers, not that they all see all my videos, most people don't get the message, unfortunately. But I do want to say something because I've had a lot of stress from this past week. And yeah, Fred says only the important people are. Well, of course. Why would I think anything other than that? You all know that I talk about, and I'm going to go into this tonight, and I'm hopefully going to put this to rest because I tried to put it to rest in 2 different videos. In my walk and talk the other day, I tried to put it to rest. All that done would stir up more controversy, get me a barrage of more comments chastising me, chastising the other commenters. And then I did my Monday morning chat yesterday and didn't go too bad. I only lost maybe 30 to 35 subscribers over that. And I thought I was pretty calm and nice. And even my video today, for some reason, where I talked about TV commercials, and I thought was a riot, and I had fun doing it. People saw, 4 or 5 people actually unsubscribed to that. So I'm saying to myself, Mitch, have you lost your charm? Do people now dislike you? Is it all because of this evolution thing? Now I'm watching Ken Berry, and he's doing his live stream today. And in every other question, the word evolutionary diet, humans have been around for hundreds of thousands of years. This is the way, I mean, he's saying the same things I'm saying. I don't see bombs falling on his farm up there. But I, and I don't ever, ever, ever knock a person's beliefs. I don't ever, you've never heard me make fun of, chastise, or advise religious people to change the way they think. If anything, I've said, and this is important, I envy the comfort that people get from their religion, the sense of community. And I'd be the last guy in the world to try to change their mind. On the other hand, and if you want to hate me for this, you can hate me, I am not religious, as are more than half the people in this country. But it always seems like everything is this half against that half. I don't care if it's politics, whatever it is, football games, it's everybody has got to be on a side and on a mission to prove their side is right and the other side is wrong. I don't, I don't want to play on any battlefield over any subject. I'm entitled to my opinions. I'm entitled to know what I know from what I've learned. I'm entitled to be wrong occasionally. But I have studied anthropology, archaeology, geology, paleoanthropology from the time I was 10 years old. When I was a kid in Philadelphia, when all the other kids were out playing sports, I spent my weekends in museums. And my favorite was the Philadelphia Museum of Natural History. And that's where they had the anthropology exhibits, the big dinosaur bones in the lobby, all of the remains of the Egyptians, the relics that have been dug up from all over the world. And this was almost 70 years ago. The amount of advancement in that science since I learned this as a child is orders of magnitude because the advancements have been in the fields of chemistry and most importantly, genetics. And the genetics are the programming of life. And the genetics, when analyzed over the last 10 or 15 years, have absolutely backed up the physical evidence of the migrations of life. And I'm convinced. I'm convinced that that's how it happened. Now, so many religious people that I know also believe that. I mean, the difference basically is saying, well, I believe in God. I just think maybe God played his role a much earlier than just a few thousand years ago. And the most religious people I know, they believe that. So I don't think it's about an argument or a lack of faith in something. I think it's semantics. And I think it's biblical literalism. And I don't agree, but I don't want to fight about it. I don't want to get into day-long debates in the chat, arguing about who's right or who's wrong. There is no right or wrong. There is only each of us and what we're comfortable believing, and everybody should just let us believe that. But I don't approach, when I say the word evolution, it has nothing, zero, zip, nada to do with religion. The problem is with those who make it have to do with religion. It is pure 100% science to me that I have proven and so many others have. And that's why I put a list on my website. There's a page that lists, I don't know, 20 or so videos that are all great, all professionally done, that talk about all the different things. And there are thousands of them out there, and they're very interesting. They're very interesting. Very interesting. I see a note here. Does it have to do with creation? I'm not going to answer that. That's up to you. You believe it. You believe it. This is the last time, my friends. And if you want to tune out now, you can tune out. If you want to label me a heretic and burn a cross on your front lawn for me tonight, go right ahead. I'm tired of it. I've been stressed out way over the max this past week, dealing with the comments, dealing with this argument that I don't have with anybody. Seeing the comments in my videos that are supposed to be talking about eating right and eating meat. See that turned into forcing the good people that follow me to have to defend me from these attacks and their attacks. I have never deleted so many comments or hidden so many users as I have last week. I take no joy in that. I made the video when I walked, and I said, I have to set some guidelines for the chats in my video. This is not a religious channel. It is not the place for religious debates. It is not the place to chastise people for their faith and their belief. And starting this morning, I started exercising what I hope I won't have to do very often. But the first two comments that I looked at first thing this morning were religious comments. Now, just for your information, so you understand, both of those comments were from people who were not religious. And if I had a bias, I would have left them up. But Mitch doesn't operate that way. That's not how I am. I don't use rules and regulations and studies and things like everybody else does to only allow the messaging through that supports my opinion. That's what they all do. That's what YouTube does. That's what the politicians and the news media do. They censor anything that challenges their opinion, but they let anything through, no matter how stupid, that supports their opinion. That, to me, is not the way to do it. So here's the guidelines, folks, and it shouldn't be a big deal because we never had this problem. Maybe I've been targeted by some of these religious fundamental groups. I don't know where these people have come from. But I don't want my channel, which is all about feeling good, getting healthy, eating right, exercising, living a good, happy life. I don't want to have the rest of my life mired fighting the crusades again. And if you think I sound a little upset about this, I am upset about it. I don't need this shit. Excuse my French. And I'm not going to tolerate it, or I'm going to just stop to continue wasting my time, working as hard as I do, with little to no reward other than a good feeling knowing that people appreciate what I do and say thank you, and a few bucks. I could go to work at a 7-Eleven at minimum wage and make more money than I do on YouTube. Maybe have less grief. So here's the deal. If I see any religious comment, and that includes the word Bible, in it, the word creation in it. To me, evolution is not a religious subject. It is a scientific subject, and I will talk about proven science. And I've offered you the proof if you're interested in looking, and it's on my website. And there's about 20 hours of science there, and that just scratches the surface. But if anybody really wants to know and really wants to understand it, go look. If you refuse to look, if you're one of these people who say, well, my mind's made up, then don't look. But don't complain. I have had people sending me links to creationist videos saying that I need to watch this video. And I emailed them back and said, no, thanks. No, thanks. I've been there and I've done that for 70 years. I own, just for your information, I own 5 Bibles. Five Bibles. I'll go get them and show them to you if you don't believe me. I own 5 Bibles. I have read almost all 5 of them, cover to cover. The first Bible that I own was one I got when I was 13 years old and got bar mitzvahed. It is the oldest version of the Bible that exists. It's the ancient Hebrew Bible. The 5 books of Moses was written 6,000, 7,000 years ago. It's the book from which all other biblical texts have come. And then I have things that are called the New Contemporary Bible, and I also have a copy of the Quran, translated, which I've read as well. I've heard all the stories. I've heard all the apologies from the apologists. I've heard all the reasons. I've heard all the logic. I've heard all of it already. There's not a soul out there that can tell me something that I haven't already discovered on my own about the origins of religion. I've studied it. I've studied the history of it. I've studied the Bible. I've studied where the Bible was written, how it was a compilation, and where the different players came from, and over what years it was written. I've been up to date on that stuff. Watching some, evangelist YouTube video about creation is not going to change my mind. There's nothing in this planet, nothing in this world now that could change my mind other than God himself, like George Burns, coming here and sitting down next to me and doing a magic trick. I don't want to debate this subject anymore. And if you would know what I went through in the past week, you'd wonder why I'm still even here tonight and still trying to make videos for people, make you laugh. So please just leave it out of the discussion. You won't hear it from me after tonight. This subject will never be talked to again about me. The next time, if it gets unbearable for me, old guy carnivore will become old guy photography, old guy cinematography. Maybe I'll be old guy in a drone again. I will make videos and talk to people who don't want to insult me. I'm sorry, I'm too old for this. So that's it. I'm sorry that I went through this. This is, me, I get started on a rant. And I'm passionate about this stuff. I'm passionate. It's not like I have never opened my eyes and looked at the other side of the argument. I've been in this argument all my life. And there are things about me that maybe you don't know. As a religious person, if you're a religious person, maybe you don't know that I've been an incredible victim of anti-Semitism in my life. Maybe you don't know that as a child, I suffered tremendous beatings from the bullies at school because I was a Jew. Maybe you don't know that one of my drill sergeants in the Army used to call me, "Hey, Jew boy." Maybe you don't know that stuff. Maybe you don't know. Now you know why I may be a little sensitive to this, because I have never been prejudiced against anybody for their religion, the color of their skin, or anything. These things leave marks on you. I wanted to get this off my chest, and I think I have. And I think I'll put a little music on. I want you to tell me if the level of that music is okay, because I'm still having a problem with the levels of these things. Tell me the level of the music. Come on, Mitch. Next subject, says Light Zone. Okay, next subject. Bill says nice, perfect, good. Okay, great. All right, we'll stop the music. All right, so is science the only alternative for non-religious people? I wonder. There's a lot of contradictory material. No, there's a lot of phony science. In fact, most science these days, and I'm not talking about science in areas other than nutrition, because there is real science going on. If there wasn't science going on, Elon Musk's first stage Falcon rockets wouldn't land each and every time on some floating little drone ship out there. They would miss, they would explode, they would go into the ocean. They hit it every time. And they hit it every time because the physics and the science they use are exact, and they work, and they're right. If we had that science way back in the 60s and 70s when we launched Voyager, and they went right where we predicted they'd go. That's Newtonian stuff, Einstein stuff. We know that. That's science. Nutrition doesn't even resemble science, the stuff that these people do. All of this nutritional science is marketing gimmicks designed to support somebody's agenda. I think the first real nutritional science that ever happened was good old Dave Feldman and Nick Norwitz, who don't have any money and aren't taking anybody's money and don't care how the studies come out. They come out the way they come out, and that's what science is. So these studies today, this nutritional science, is all bullshit. It's all just surveys, epidemiological studies. None of it is controlled enough. None of it goes on long enough. None of it isn't full of what they call confounders. You know, they get a result they want to blame on eating meat. And the greatest example I can think of is the way they construct these studies. You take the studies that show that meat causes diabetes. And damn if Harvard didn't put one of them out here a few months ago. Remember that? Eating meat causes diabetes. Well, we all know it's exactly the opposite. Eating meat actually cures diabetes. Eating sugar causes diabetes. So what do? They hand out a bunch of surveys to people. What have you eaten in the past year, the past 6 months? And people put down, well, I eat a lot of McDonald's Big Macs. And I eat, Big Mac and fries and a chocolate shake. And they put that in the meat category. Well, this person's a meat eater because he ate a hamburger. I eat a lot of pizza with pepperoni. Well, pepperoni is meat, so you eat meat, so you're a meat eater. So now they got two meat eaters whose diet is about 2% meat and 98% sugar, starch, and seed oils. And those people get diabetes. But in the study, they've classified them in the meat category. So they feel perfectly justified in putting out a study from an institution that pushes vegans and vegetarian agenda. They feel perfectly justified in notifying everyone of their news media outlets, their friends at CNN, NBC, ABC, MSNBC, and all that, and the entire liberal media, they feel absolutely justified in saying, we just did a study that proves that meat causes diabetes. And out it went. And out it went. And it went out on the media everywhere. And the opposing opinion is that, wait a minute, that study was a little conflicted because of who paid for it and who did it, and confounded by the fact that those so-called meat eaters were getting 90+% of their calories from sugar and carbohydrates, with a token little 4-ounce or 6-ounce hamburger patty thrown in, or a pizza that's all bread with a few slices of pepperoni on top. That's what we've got. So any study, and these studies are expensive, and there's no industry funding studies to prove meat is good for you. I don't know if it's the, I don't know if the beef industry has just fallen down. They they used to do advertising. The dairy industry used to advertise. I don't see those ads anymore. I don't see ads for beef. So I don't know if they're falling down or not, but all of these studies that Ansel Keys, his study was crooked as hell. All of the studies have been disproven, and investigative reporters like Nina Teicholz and Gary Taubes have video after video after video showing you just exactly what they did to cheat. And the studies that didn't prove their own agenda never got published. And they even came up with a name for that. They call that file drawing it. They file drawed it. And since it was their study and they paid for it, they were under no obligation to release it and show that that study actually disproved their hypothesis. Then we've got some of the new meta-analysis that are done off of these big, huge database. One of them is called NHANES, where they take the raw data from many semi-legitimate randomized controlled trials, and they massage and crunch those numbers. And that was the study, the last study that I looked at, that showed, it was about cholesterol, that showed, and you've probably heard of it or seen it, that when people are over 60, generally the ones that live the longest are the ones with the highest cholesterol. In these kind of epidemiologic studies, nutritional studies, you could, and the way you can massage statistics and use relative risk factors instead of absolute risk factors, like they do, like the first Lipitor study did, when it took a less than 1% difference in the rates of heart disease among the high-fat and the low-fat group, and figured out a way to statistically call it a 46% reduction in risk of heart disease. That's called relative risk. And for those of you who haven't seen that exposed 10 times, basically, if in one group 0.8% of them had heart disease, and the other group 1.3% of them had heart disease, the basic difference was 0.5%. So that means out of 100 people, that means the difference in the two groups was half a person. And they didn't even, and it was so close that in any statistical study, that would become just random noise and ignored. But these geniuses needed to prove that the statin group died less than the other group. The statin group died 0.8 out of 100. The other group died 1.3 out of 100. And they decided that, and this is the cool part, that 1.3 is 46% more than 0.8. And it is. 1.3 is 46% more, is 146% of point 0.8. It's relative relationship. Do you understand what I'm saying? And the ad came out. And the ad came out. Lipitor reduces your risk of suffering a heart attack by 46%. Now, if you read that, you say, holy cow, who wouldn't want that to have half the risk of a heart attack? That's not what they're saying. Because it's not what it means. Because before the statins, you had a 1.3% risk, and after the statins, you had a 0.8% risk. But in either case, the risk was negligible. The odds were neither one of them is going to get. If only 1 out of 100 happens, would you risk having to take a drug that has all of these bad side effects your entire life for a half a 1% odds that may not even have been attributed to the statins because of the way the study was designed? But no. And that launched the entire cholesterol lowering craze, and the drug companies had the biggest selling drug that ever hit the planet, I think, until maybe Ozempic. I see my friend Boyd Lamb is commenting. I think Mitch gets sick of me commenting in his videos. Whether I have something relevant or slightly intelligent to say, I try to comment for the algorithm. Well, thank you, Boyd. Boyd also sends me a lot of email with funny memes and things. Anyway, that was my answer, my long answer. I have a tendency to have long answers to short questions to one comment, and I'll get back I want to take a look at the comment. I saw on the news this morning, and I made a note of this because I thought this was outrageous. The story was this: people, to show you how crooked and devious people are, and how everybody, I don't care who they are, is figuring out different ways to game the system. It's not bad enough we get all these robocalls and phishing emails and things trying to get in and steal our identity, and scammers, romance scammers, and everything. It isn't bad enough we got to deal with all those people. People are now faking injuries and disabilities, going into airports in wheelchairs so that they can get to the head of the line and get on the airplane first. And they had a thing on the news about it this morning, showing these people. They can't wait in line. They're too good for that. It's crazy. It's crazy. It's crazy. Another thing here, there's a scientific study, and I mean, this is true. This is how they build this, as a scientific study based on many researchers, has brilliantly determined that the greatest cause of lack of sleep and nightmares in our younger population these days is social media use before bedtime. Shocker. The most common nightmare turned out to be the inability to log in. I hope I'm not the only person that finds that hysterical. Whoever wrote this story, I can truly say that their knowledge of the obvious is exceeded only by their grasp of the self-evident. That's funny right there. Okay, enough of that. Time to hit the chat, Mitch. Say hello to people. Read a few questions, because you guys are chatting away. There's 100 of you here. Good to see you. I have a little better crowd tonight than I did last week. used up a half hour ranting. I like ranting. I like ranting. Okay, we got Ellen here. Scooby, how you doing? How come I can't get way? That's as far as north as the chat will let me go there. Let's see. Who came in here first today? First was Cliff. Cliff Medina. You still here? How you doing? Came in at 11 o'clock in the morning. Jerry Bell shortly thereafter says, hello, meat people. Camp Up was in 4:32 this afternoon. What's the story, Mitch? In 48 hours, he's got a fast. 10 p.m. Irish time. Looking forward to the show, he says. Richard Williams was in here early. Michelle Pitarch is, no, not Pitarch. Poquoti. I never get this one right. Michelle Pocouti, I'll call it. Pocouti. Pokouti. Pocouti. How you doing? Cliff again. Jody, drone shots, my buddy. Oscar Rodriguez. These are all people that are here early. Rosie's here. Hey, Rosie, I saw you interviewed today. Very nice. Very nice. By Dave Mack, if you haven't seen it. Our Rosie is a star. Ellen is here. Rosie's here. Everybody's saying hi to each other. Juan Manuel from Chile is here. Michael Pregler said hello. Naomi Jones. Mike K is here. How you doing? Hi there. Brenda McIntyre. Good to see you. And Mark is here. Eat, meat, heal for life. A lot of these people are green. They're in the private community. Light Zone. How you doing? How you doing? From Arizona. East Arizona is in the house. Tom, Biking 442 is here. Trish M. Hi, Trish. Coco. Hey, Coco, how you doing? Camp Up again, and let's see if I can get down to somebody that hasn't chimed in yet. Steve Studley, how are you doing, Steve? Said good evening, all. And Maggie May is here. Amber Dawn. Very photographic sounding name. Fred is here. Hi, Fred. Only the important people are here, Fred says. Well, I consider all of you that are still here my friends, and I thank you for that. I can be difficult sometimes. In fact, this version of me that you get is a much calmer, milder version of the businessman side of me that could intimidate people when I wanted to. Richard says, hit the like button. Rosie's still here. And I think that's most of the people that were in. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go way down to the bottom of the chat, to the current stuff, and see what you guys are talking about. Vikings talking to Rosie. Says, Rosie, I'm at a beginner level. I just run program P whatever. I can't read it. Do I have to get my other glasses? PO? Is that what it says? Huh. Coast to Coast Drones. I've been here through the formal change. Yeah, Bill, my buddy, my old drone buddy. Good to see you, man. How you doing? I'm lurking in your Wednesday night live stream sometimes. I don't always make my presence known, but I'm keeping an eye on you, man, trying to keep you straight. Ann Wright says, hi, Mitch from the UK, still awake at 1:37 in the morning. You're a trooper. Thank you. Thank you so much for that. Woody Ingram is here. Hello, Mitch, he says. And you guys evidently are talking about these vibrating plates because Mark says my plates shake in the dishwasher. Oh, yeah. Everybody's talking about have a vibrating plate. Jonathan is here. Jonathan is here. How you doing, Jonathan? Bags packed family from Papua New Guinea, and I had a little start. I had a little start the other day when they reported on the news that 2,000 people. They thought 2,000 people had died in a landslide over in Papua New Guinea, and the first thing I thought of was Jonathan, but he's since chimed in, and and he's okay. He's okay. Maybe somebody over there, Jonathan, or a couple people got together and used some of these vibration plates and caused that problem. We have Rayford Humphreys here. How you doing? Saying hi to everybody. Scooby, eat meat, eat meat. You guys are. Coco says, fly first class, go first. Even the first class people don't get to go on before the handicap and the wheelchair people. And I think that's great if they're truly handicapped, but if they're faking it just to game the system, they're right up there with those people that borrow their grandmother's handicap parking thing when they go shopping so that they can park in the handicap place. And I always take notice of that when I and Seinfeld had a thing on one of his episodes about that somebody parking in a handicap space that wasn't handicapped. And ever since I saw that Seinfeld episode, if I happen to be parking somewhere and wandering by and I see somebody pull into a handicap spot, even if they got a sticker, I wait to see when they get out just how handicapped they look. And so many times they don't look handicapped to me. Now they may have some kind of a handicap, but it's not obvious. And I say to myself, if they can walk that fast and that good and go into Sam's Club and walk around that store a half a mile, they could park for a little further away, but they don't. Maybe it makes them feel special. Ah, Viking, hack your airplane ride. I hope I don't get blocked now, says Mark. No, Mark, we're not blocking anybody in the chat here. We have good people here. Statins, Tom says statins actually increase all cause mortality. Yes, they do. Yes, they. I've always been of a mind. I remember when Google first came out. Of course, I was in the computer business at the time. We were doing internet hosting way back in the early days. So I was up on all that stuff, and I was an early user of search engines. And one of the early on, way back then, I actually typed in the words cholesterol hoax. And even back then, I got thousands of hits talking about what they knew for almost for a certain back then was a hoax, and they were spelling out just how these drug companies were massaging the results of these tests. And this was, 30 back in the 80s, late 80s, early 90s. And I've always thought they were dangerous. And then when they found out that some of the positive results that some of these studies got, they were very, very minor and very small, but they found out that statins have a slight anti-inflammatory effect. And they figured that whatever benefit the statins had, it came from the anti-inflammatory part of it rather than the cholesterol lowering part of it. So a lot of people said, well, if that's the case, just take one of those little baby aspirins. If you want to just lower your inflammation a little bit. And that would have a lot fewer side effects And it would let your cholesterol go back to where it needed to be because we need our cholesterol. And I think that it's not far fetched to think that the current state of mental health, dementia, Alzheimer's, and the growth of nursing homes is the result of lowering people's cholesterol way too low. And I've even heard some recent people say, and again, just because you hear somebody say something doesn't mean it means anything or it's true, but I've heard them say that any total cholesterol below 200 is not good, is not good. And that means if your total cholesterol is 200 and you've got an HDL in that range, your HDL would be about 100, would be about 50 or 60. Your LDL would be 130, 140, which causes these people to panic, let alone for people like me whose LDL is 340. And I'm proud of it. I ought to get a t-shirt that says that. Okay, where were we? It's not even, statin is creepily spelled like Satan. That's cool. That's slightly religious, but I'll allow that. I'll allow that. It's not even subtle. They're trying to kill and lobotomize the population. Well, I wouldn't. That's not so far fetched either. You know, everybody calls a lot of these things conspiracy theories. Unfortunately, some of them are actually conspiracies. Especially these global organizations that meet in castles, that fly to different secluded areas of the world in private jets, meet in castles, have lavish meals together, have names like the Bilderberg Group, have members like the Clintons and Bill Gates, and some guy named Klaus, who's in charge of something big over in Europe, who wants to control everything, wants a new world order. That's a conspiracy, supposedly. So, yeah, maybe some of this stuff might be actually happening. I think there's evidence for some of it. And if it is, what can you do about it? What can you do about it? I guarantee you, all of these people over there that are pushing for us peons to eat vegetables, when they have their dinners, it's steak and lobster all the way, folks. Not any steak, but the best steak. Because they're the elites. We're just the peasants. How else are they going to keep 8 or 9 billion people alive on this planet other than feeding them monocrop crap when we got to save all the cows for the elite? I don't know. It sucks. I'm glad I'm not 20 years old. Yes. You're right, Tom. Statins increase. I believe they do. I believe they're not good for you. Uh, Rosie, Scooby, the neurologist is trying to stop statin use. Scooby, the neurologist. Are you calling Scooby a neurologist, or are you telling her that your neurologist is trying to stop statin use? John Toko or Tocho, it says, let's give Mitch some positive thumbs up. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. Very, very nice of you. Bill, my old buddy who's known me a long time, says, I'm a man of many talents. Or jack of all trades, master of none, maybe. Could be true. Has anyone read The Big Fat Surprise by Nina Teicholz? Great analysis of crappy science and aroma of diet. Well, if you haven't read the book, just go to one of her videos. Just go to YouTube, type Nina Teicholz in the search. She'll come up. Not only does she make videos herself, but she must have been interviewed 50 times. And she's terrific. She's just terrific and smart and doesn't take any shit from anybody. She's a bulldog when it comes to ferreting out these crooks. And she's got the receipts. She's got the emails. She's got the charts and graphs. She's got the real data. She finds the real data from studies and shows how they manipulated it and exactly what they did. Much like people have exposed Ansel Keys with his 7 country study. We've talked about that many times. 7 out of 22 countries for which he had data. He picked the 7 that actually showed that his hypothesis was correct and rejected all the ones that showed that his hypothesis was completely and totally wrong. Created, we talked about this last week or 2 weeks ago, the French paradox, which eventually went on to be responsible for the tremendous growth of the wine industry in this world. It's all linked. Everything that happens affects what comes later or determines what comes later. There's a saying, there's something called the butterfly effect. Have you ever heard of the butterfly effect? To me, that explains how random all the events were for an unimaginable length of time that led to us being here, being exactly like we are, and not something completely different. The butterfly effect. One little action by one insignificant little creature. And this has been done in some of these time travel movies. And there's more validity to this where somebody goes back in time and changes one little thing. And when they come back, everything is just completely different. The world that they left wasn't there. The new world is full of monsters and overgrown with, not that that could be a real version of it, but just the butterfly effect. And it was named that way because somebody once said that a butterfly in Africa flapping its wings could have a small effect on the air mass around it, but that could affect another air mass that's just at a tipping point about which way it wants to go, either to become a big storm or not. And then that could affect down the road another thing. And it all boils down to the fact that what happens is a killer storm develops, and it wouldn't have developed if that butterfly hadn't have flapped its wings. Doesn't take much to change things. It's raining like hell here, folks. I don't know if you can hear it, but it just started to rain. Let me go back. I'm going back. Well, let me go back down to the bottom of the chat and see what you guys are doing. Good night, all. It's been fun. Steve Studley, good night to you, man. Juan Miguel is here. Says it's the chapter of the Twilight Zone. That's right. You're right. There were a number of time travel movies. I'm trying to think what they were, where they went back to the time of the dinosaurs. Somebody dropped a pen or killed a single insect, and that's all it took. It changed the entire course of evolution because that's how shaky every step of it was along the way. And we know that now. We have the science for that. I've studied that. I've gone back. I've read a lot about that period of time. Here I go. I'll try to keep this short, but it's interesting. That period of time, 530, 540 million years ago, to a period they call the Ediacaran period. Most people have never heard that. It's called Ediacaran. And at the end of the Ediacaran was the beginning of the Cambrian period. And most people who've studied biology know what the Cambrian period is because that's associated with something called the Cambrian explosion, which was the biggest growth in living things. And this is about the time at the end of the Ediacaran when life went from being prokaryotes, which are bacteria, cells without nucleus, to eukaryotes, which are cells similar to what we are. We have eukaryote cells. And in the eukaryote cell, you have organelles like mitochondria. You have a nucleus that contains chromosomes and the DNA and all the modern stuff that differentiate us from the bacteria. And it was right about this time that that shift happened and the first eukaryote cells happened. And the story, or what scientists, now none of us were there. There weren't none of us yet. There weren't plants. There weren't animals. Up until that point, there was just single cell animals like amoebas and bacteria. There was fungus. That's pretty much it. Bacteria ate other bacteria, and I've told this story. They ate other bacteria, and they got absorbed, and it's kind of where the mouth came from, and we still have remnants of that ancient mouth so that food can get into our body. God, is it raining here? We need the rain, too. I love rain this time of year. Florida always tends to have droughts and then fires, and we don't want to have that. But way back when, some bacteria ate another bacteria, and I've told this story, and it didn't dissolve as normal. Something was different about that other bacteria that it ate, and that bacteria that it ate turned out had the chemistry similar to the chemistry we have today, had an electron transport chain. It had the proteins to make ATP to power the cell. And God knows who negotiated the deal, but a symbiotic relationship formed. And symbiotic relationships in nature are very, very common. We humans have a symbiotic relationship, each one of us, with trillions of bacteria. Inside us, outside of us, all over us. Our mouths are full of them. They're in our eyes, they're in our nose, they're in our colon, we call them microbiome. That's a very sophisticated name, but we are crawling with bacteria with whom we have a symbiotic relationship. And if not for that symbiotic relationship between us and our friends that we keep trying to kill with antiseptics and antibacterial cleaners, we kill more good ones than we do bad ones. With antibiotic drugs that kill all these things. But if it wasn't for the symbiotic relationship that large multicell animals formed with other forms of life inside them, there would be no ribeyes today. There wouldn't be a ribeye. Couldn't find a ribeye because a cow could not have lived. A cow and any ancestor of the cow would have gone extinct way, way before. Because the only reason a cow can live today on grass is because of a symbiotic relationship with bacteria in its hindgut that eat the fiber, digest it, and excrete free fatty acids, which the cow then absorbs, just like we absorb when we eat meat. And if not for those little bacteria, trillions of them sitting down there, eating up all that fiber and plant matter, fermenting it, that's what fermenting is. That's what fermenting means. It means some little symbiotic bacteria in your gut is doing its thing. It's like yeast makes bread rise. Yeast eats the sugar and farts and makes gas, and it makes bubbles in the bread, and it makes the bread rise. If not for these little critters that we had the symbiotic relationship with, life would not exist as we know it. And we think it's yicky, they're germs, and we try to kill them all. And way back at the end of the Ediacaran, the first of these symbiotic relationships happened for some reason or other in one eukaryote cell. And a deal was made where the eaten bacteria provided some energy in the form of ATP and became a benefit. And when that cell divided, then you had two of them. And then because the mitochondria was its own separate living organism living inside of another organism, it had its own DNA. And it divided separate from the division of the cell. It was living inside the cell. It was earning its keep by providing energy, but it was still its own thing. And it had mitosis, and it had its own DNA, again, different. And these things started multiplying, and they caught on, and one thing led to another. And here we sit, over 500 million years later, and every cell in our body has a descendant. The mitochondria in every one of our cells is a descendant of that first mitochondria that existed over 500 million years ago and had, this is where the butterfly effect comes in, had that one bacteria 550 million years ago or so, not accidentally, not gotten along with its new resident and just dissolved it like every other bacteria that it ate. The last 500 million years of anthropology and the history of living things would be wildly, wildly different than it is today. That's a truth. That's a logical fact. And the cool thing is that we used to just think it was a possibility until we developed the science to decode the DNA. And once we got a shot at seeing the DNA and discovering the exact same coding in our DNA in these other living things, and tracing them back and finding the points where they split, we would never have had to ever dig up a bone to understand how living things came to be what they are today. We could have learned all of it eventually from DNA. And that's how we know for certain, the odds, there are 3 billion base pairs in every DNA molecule. 3 billion base pairs. If you have 2 organisms and when you analyze the DNA and you find out that 2.8 billion of the 3 billion base pairs or instructions or code or genes are identical. The odds that those two things came from unrelated sources is impossible. It's impossible for that to have happened accidentally so many times to so many different species that just happen to almost look like each other, too. It's an elegant story and one of the most fascinating stories that I've ever learned. And I still marvel. If you can tell from my voice, I marvel at the complexity of what it took for us to get here and how there's no number high enough to even count the number of times it could have gotten screwed and turned out entirely different. I'll give you one more example of that if you're not getting bored with me talking about the wonders of life and science. The dinosaurs. A lot of people don't think about this. A lot of people don't believe the science that we've discovered because it's very recent, last 40 years. Nobody knew what happened. There are people who still think that the science doesn't completely explain it, but there's enough pieces of the science. And maybe if I explain to you how the science works, you'll give it a little more credibility. 65 million years ago, the dinosaurs had been alive on this planet almost 100 million years already. Okay? They go way back. And they ruled the planet. They were top dog. Who the hell? They were top of the food chain. Mammals at the time, 65 million years ago, were the first mammals and basically small rodents like shrews who lived underground because they could hide from the dinosaurs. The only reason the mammals, our ancestors, even survived was because they lived underground. They couldn't become big and they couldn't be running around on the surface. They wouldn't have lasted 5 minutes. Oh, I wasn't there. I didn't see it, but that kind of makes sense. And since we found so many relics of both the little mammals and the big dinosaurs that just happened to be dug up, and we've carbon dated so many of them. And carbon dating, a lot of people really don't understand what that means. They've heard the term. Is that they're not talking about carbon, they're talking about a radioactive isotope of carbon, maybe carbon-14. And all radioactive isotopes have a thing called a half-life because they're emitting radiation, and over time, just like something hot eventually cools off, well, over time, these things cool off. And a half-life means how long it takes to give up half of the radiation that it's going to give up. And the half-life of a radioactive carbon isotope is about 5,000 years. About 5,000 years. So when they dig something up, they can tell the age of it by measuring the amount of radiation that carbon isotope is still giving off. And if it's and figure out that, well, before it started giving off any, that was 6,000 years ago or 8,000 years ago. And it's become a very accurate way of dating things. But how do we know? How do we know if something is 100 million years old when the half-life of radioactive carbon isotopes are only 5,000 years? That's because carbon isn't the only element that has isotopes. Some isotopes of some minerals and some elements have a half-life of a trillionth of a second. It just so happens that there's an isotope of potassium called potassium 40. Potassium 40 has a half life of billions of years. And they discovered this potassium 40. And with it, they can fairly accurately date something back to the beginning of Earth's formation, even. So, this is just another one of those advancements in science that's recent and lets us just zero in on some of these things and give the naysayers less of an excuse to keep trashing these theories. So now we've got a fairly reliable method of dating. And in the meantime, we have archaeologists, and we've all seen these movies. We've all seen Indiana Jones. We know what it looks like for these people. They go out somewhere where they think these creatures lived. And so many of them, of the dinosaurs lived right where we live, right here in North America. And they set up their tents, and they get college students, and they all sit in the sun all day in short pants, and they work with paintbrushes and toothbrushes and little picks, and they carefully dig, and they dig up stuff. Millions and millions and millions of fossils have been unearthed all over the world in the last 100 or so years. Everything from stone tools to seashells to bones, teeth, jaw bones, old pots and pans, utensils, clothing, dinosaur bones. The collection of dinosaur bones that exists right now is phenomenal. I handled some of them when I was a kid at the Philadelphia Natural History Museum. I actually held, as a kid, in my hand, a real dinosaur bone. It was epic to think that 100 million years ago, this thing might have been a 20-foot tall monster of an animal. This might have been his, his shin bone. Who knows? It was heavy. It's fossilized. It had turned to rock, which is what happens to these things when they stay buried long enough. That's what fossilization is. But it was a dinosaur bone. And in the lobby of this museum, there was a complete Tyrannosaurus Rex put together from the bones. And if you've seen movies like Night of the Museum, you know what I'm talking about. They have these in museums. They have them in New York. They have them in Philadelphia. They have them all over the place. They actually reconstruct the dinosaur from the real bones. Well, we've been digging up these bones, and we've been carbon dating these bones. And it was an interesting thing, and that was there was never a dinosaur bone found that was younger, newer than 65 million years. With all the dinosaur bones that were dug up, nobody ever found one from after 65 million years ago. It was like it just stopped. And where they found these bones, because keep in mind that the Earth's crust is moving and mountain ranges are being pushed up, and things that were oceans 100 million years ago are now under the ice in Antarctica. And in some of the ice cores that we dig down there, we find fossilized marine skeletons because that used to be at the bottom of the ocean. And if you've ever driven on the interstate highway through a pass that was cut, where they have a big hill and they cut a pass, and you look at the face of it, you see that it has layers. Everybody's seen this. You go to the Grand Canyon, you see the bands, and they have different colors. Those are like rings on a tree. The further down you go, you find what was on the surface further back in history. And they can take samples of those and date them too. So whenever they dig, it's very simple for them to date the level of the area they're digging down into. And they also realized they never found any dinosaur bones newer than 65 million years old. So long before we discovered the evidence of the asteroid that did the dirty deed, we already knew that something fishy had happened and the dinosaurs never made it past 65 million years ago. We just didn't know how. And many theories came up. Many theories. They had volcanic theories. They had, and there are people today that still believe that it was a volcano and not a meteor. But something was discovered in the Yucatan Peninsula, a ridge of not quite mountains, but upcroppings that were hugely circular and had a big diameter and kind of disappeared into the Gulf of Mexico. And it looked like the southern rim of a huge crater. And they started to look at that, and then they went out into the Gulf and found that that extended into the Gulf of Mexico, and they found more of that underwater, which probably wasn't underwater 65 million years ago, but because everything shifted and changed, it is today. And they found this huge crater. And they started analyzing the dirt from that crater, and they found that all around that crater, there was an unusually high level of a very, very rare metal called iridium. I don't know if you've heard of iridium before, but you don't find much iridium on this planet. In fact, most of the iridium that you do find, you find around where asteroids hit, because that iridium is carried to this planet when an asteroid crashes into it. But there's very little of it native to the planet itself. Maybe there's a lot of it way down in the core, but nothing anywhere near the surface that we can get to. And they found tons of iridium here. And then they started to notice, as they were digging all over the world, wherever they were digging, that when they finally got down to the layer, and this is the fascinating part, that when they finally got down to that layer, just below, they found dinosaur remnants. They found the layer that was on the surface 65 million years ago. Above that layer, no dinosaurs. Below that layer, lots of dinosaurs. Guess what they found in that layer? Everywhere around the planet, they found a huge amount of iridium. In other words, the entire surface of the planet Earth 65 million years ago, when that asteroid slammed into Earth, it threw up so much into the atmosphere that it encircled the globe, caused global fires, blocked the sun for years, and deposited a layer of iridium from that asteroid on every square foot of the planet Earth. And I don't care where you go, and I don't care where you dig, if you can dig down to exactly where it was on the surface, you will find iridium. The name of that layer is the KT boundary, and it exists everywhere. The KT. And it is the end of the Cretaceous period and the beginning of the Tertiary. The instant that asteroid hit this planet and all the dinosaurs died and the Earth was covered with a thin layer of iridium was the beginning of the Tertiary period and the complete changes in the evolution of life that happened after that predator was removed from the picture. And the fact that that predator, the dinosaur, was removed, enabled our ancient relatives, I'm talking about the shrews and the little rodents, to come out of their holes in the ground and start to change and grow bigger and become what we are today. That is not a fairy tale. Every step along the way can be shown not only in the physical appearance of the bones of the different species, it can be shown in the genetic coding and the programming that builds the species. And it has resulted in me sitting here telling you this story that some people tell me didn't happen that way because it doesn't say so in the Bible. It's okay with me if you believe that. It took me a lifetime to learn all of this stuff. It would take me a lifetime to impart all that to somebody who challenges me with such a simple concept that 1,000 years ago, some superstitious peasants wrote a book, and that's where the real truth lies. I'm sorry, but I don't want to change your mind. I just don't want you to harass me because of it. But that's how it works, and that's just another one of those things, like the one bacteria that swallowed another. Imagine, and I think about this a lot, imagine the odds of that asteroid 65 million years ago hitting the Earth. What would have happened if it had missed by 100 miles, like so many asteroids do? If it had just whizzed on by, do you think we'd be here today? And if the dinosaurs hadn't been killed 65 million years ago because of the gazillion to one odds of that asteroid slamming into this planet and hitting exactly where it hit, because they've said that if that asteroid hadn't hit exactly where it hit, if it hit somewhere else, the odds are the dinosaurs would not have been completely eliminated. So another one of those random chance things that changes everything. But imagine, try to think of what the world would be today if dinosaurs hadn't completely and 100% vanished. And basically the only living relatives or remnants of the lineage of the dinosaurs that we have today among the living things are birds. And birds are descendants of the dinosaurs. They evidently survived back then. The small dinosaurs that could fly survived for the same reason that the little rodents that could crawl into a hole survived. They could find a place that was cooler. They could find small amounts of something to eat because there wasn't obviously much food, but it happened like it happened. It had to have happened like it happened, or we wouldn't be here. Pardon me. I like to tell stories like that. And I see by the viewer count, I hope you found that, I hope you found that interesting, but that's food for thought. And this is just the kind of silly stuff I think about a lot and try to relate what we're doing and what we're talking about and the science of nutrition and the reasons why we are addicts and we can't control ourselves. I had to understand that. And now that I do understand it, I almost compelled and find a need to make you understand it because it makes it a hell of a lot easier to deal with it once you understand what it is you're dealing with. And no, we wouldn't be here if the dinosaurs, if that asteroid hadn't hit the planet, we wouldn't be here. I think, between you and me, that the dinosaurs would have evolved into a sentient and intelligent life form because they had a hell of a head start on us. The first of us didn't come around until 2 or 3 million years ago, the first genus Homo, which was the first creature that actually evidently started to have self-awareness. But imagine with an additional 65 million years and a head start like a dinosaur had, we may have had a world today with dinosaurs wearing business suits driving cars. Who knows? But it certainly wouldn't be the world. It certainly wouldn't be the world that we have today. And exactly, just the same way, every action, every event that happens everywhere in the world by everybody or everything has the ability to change the entire course of what happens after now. Just like it did in your family and my family. A lot of times I say to myself, God, if I'd only done this, or what would have happened if I hadn't have done that? What would have happened if I had just been there 10 seconds later than I was? I met my second wife. I was divorced and younger, much younger, in my 30s, late 30s, and I was going out to a restaurant that had a lounge to see if I couldn't meet a woman because, I was single, wanted to meet a woman. So I parked my car and I'm walking up to the door of the restaurant and there's two women in front of me. So I was about maybe 10 feet behind them, and we get up to the restaurant door. They open the doors, big double doors, and they walk in, and they let the door go right in my face. I was used to it. So I open the door, and I go in, and one of them was really good looking. So I, of course, went, and I said, thanks a lot. She looks at me, she says, for what? I said, you just let that door go in my face. But I'm okay. And she said, oh, I'm glad. I'm sorry. I didn't see you there. I said, no, I'm just an icebreaker. I said, I figured I'd talk to you since you almost killed me. And that became my second wife, who was the psycho from hell, bipolar, ruination of 40 years of my life, 20 while we were married, and the 20 since we were married. And I say to myself, Mitch, if you had arrived at that parking lot that night, just 30 seconds later than you did, the entire second half of your life would have taken a completely and entirely different direction. Now, not everything that happened to me while I was married to her was bad. my computer business, all the stuff that I did, all my, accomplishments and everything happened while I was married to her. Some of them might not have happened had I been married to somebody else, because who knows where that might have taken me. But that just is another one of those things that you say, a few seconds this way or that way. The entire course of your history has changed. I don't know why I'm so fascinated by that kind of stuff, but it has. It has always fascinated me. Mitch, it wasn't her, it was her diet. No, she was an Italian, and she actually was not a carb addict. She ate, but she drank wine. Oh my God, that was the downfall. She at least one or two bottles every day. How can I tell you? Mitch is smooth with the ladies. I used to be. I was a dumpy looking guy, bald headed guy. I told you I had a body like the Pillsbury Doughboy. But I always, for some reason, I've always had the personality, and people just, people would be drawn to me. I don't know. Mitch on the make. Yeah, I was. But that cured me, that marriage, actually. I tried after I left her to find another one, but no, never happened. No, you were a handsome man. I've seen your photos, says Ellen. Well, thank you, Ellen. Thank you so much. I wasn't bad. When I was thinner, I did get, I used to get a little plump, but I generally kept it, was she a butterfly? Ha. Oh, man. I don't know. Is there anything left about me that you guys haven't heard yet, or you don't know the story of yet? Well, I'll tell you, I feel a lot better now. I feel like I've spent the last hour among friends after I got done talking about the stress that this has put me through. So from here on out, when it's necessary for me to talk about an evolutionary source of something, I'll talk about it. And if somebody decides to, that I need to go to Sunday school or something, I just have to delete their comments and not feel like I hate to hurt their feelings. I mean, I don't blame them for being religious. I would be too if I had had their upbringing, if I was forced to go to Catholic school, if I was lectured by my parents every day. What else do we know but what we were taught? Not enough of us are really free thinkers. We're not given the opportunity in life. We're never taught how to think. We're taught how to remember stuff. That's why there's so many silly doctors out there. They don't know how to think. A doctor only knows what it said or what he needed to know to pass the test. And when he was asked on the test, what's the best diet? The answer was healthy fruits and vegetables. And that was good enough for him. And that stayed good enough for him because he inserted himself into the machine, or she, into the machine, became the cog in that particular wheel, and went round and round from that day forward, doing his thing, writing his prescriptions like he was taught. Never. This is the part that amazes me. And I saw a video on YouTube today with Gary Fettke, and y'all know who he is. If you don't, look him up. Who was talking about, he said, any doctor that at this point in time doesn't know about what a low carb, high fat diet is and is willing to explore it or find out more about it is guilty of malpractice. Because any doctor that finds out that there is an avenue that can help cure his patients of anything is obligated to explore it, because I got news for you. They certainly explore every new drug that comes down the pike, don't they? And they explore the hot young drug rip carrying it, who's taking them out to dinner or on a junket to Hawaii. That they never miss out on. They never fail to explore it. But one of their patients, like one of you guys or me, goes into that doctor and says, Doc, how do I look? How are my numbers? And the doctor says, well, your numbers are good and you lost weight. You look great. What have you been doing? Well, Doc, I've been eating a low carb, high fat diet. And this doctor will look you smack in the face. And instead of saying, tell me more, you know what he says? Well, keep doing what you're doing, but I think it's going to kill you. And that's not a joke. That's what happens. These guys who believe every word out of that pretty young drug rep's mouth and can't even take their patients seriously when miracles happen to their patients because they start eating what we're supposed to eat. These people need to somehow be exposed for the frauds that they are. And it's sad. And it's sad because they all took an oath to do no harm. And when there's a way to help somebody and you don't use that option, you're doing harm. And the evidence of that harm is virtually everywhere. Virtually everywhere. Were you talking about how they built the pyramids? Yeah. There's a lot of theories about that. Some of them make a lot of sense. I've looked into that too. I'm curious. I have to look into everything. William, you nailed it all. Hypocrisy. Tom, you're correct. What is it? Do no harm, but they, yeah. But now they're now the leading cause of death. Yeah. Medical. Doctors kill more people than doctors are the leading cause of death. I mean, there's a statistic. There used to be a comparison about the medical profession, how many people they kill accidentally every year. It's crazy. It's absolutely nuts. The third leading cause of death is medical error officially. Ellen says that. Maybe. Well, we got all the private community. Only people left in here other than Bill Cook are green. And I see Lambs is here. How you doing? Rich LeBoy and Marilyn White are here. William McCarthy is here. But I guess it's not easy being green, guys. I never got the sword and snack symbol. Oh, at any rate, guys, listen. I've been going on for an hour and 20 minutes, and that's enough, I think, for me tonight. I feel better. Thank you for listening. Thanks for sticking with me. Let me get it off my chest. No more politics or religion. Those are Ken Berry's rules. I like those rules. If he can talk about evolution, I can too, but not in a religious manner. Not as opposed to whatever you believe, but as a science that has evidence that can be found and looked at if you so care to. And if that means that nobody that's religious watches me, so be it. I have actually culled the herd here with this last few videos. I've had a lot of people who've sworn that I'm godless and a heathen, and they'll be damned if they're going to take any advice from me, even though it might save their life. And that's sad. That's sad. Uh, Thanks, Ellen. I appreciate that. It's sad. And don't let the door hit you in the ass on the way out. I got a kick out of you guys. A lot of you guys actually came to my defense in some of these comments, and I felt good. I felt good. One of you guys, one of these people left one of those comments, and he put, "Don't let the door hit you on the way out." So I'm going to put on a little bit of my exit music here. There it is. Hope you can hear that. Again, I have to really fine tune the audio thing with this mixer and make sure that it's working good. Everybody loves me. I'm a Christian. Jesus. 8. What? Terry, you can be a Christian. It doesn't matter to me. I told you, I'm a Jew. I have my beliefs. I never liked it when people held that against me because I didn't believe what they believed, and I try to give them the same consideration. So, of course, a lot of you are Christians. I would be surprised if not. But most of the Christians that I know accept evolution as totally separate. Ever since the Pope, if you know this, back in 1976, there's an edict. The Pope at the time actually put out an edict, and he said that the church finds nothing in conflict with the science of evolution. Basically, what most of the theologians did was basically just adjusted the time frame of when they thought God might have played a role that was more reasonable, because so much happened before God got here, evidently, according to science. So they've adjusted the timeline, that's all. They still believe in their God. They still spread it. And the fact that I'm still not a stone hard cold atheist, I cannot tell you that I don't believe that there are things out there we don't understand. My viewpoint is we can't understand them, and that people call God, we can't understand it in our puny way of thinking at this stage in our development. We're just discovering quantum physics and forces and particles and matter and things that go beyond physics that we think we knew, space and time that we thought we knew. We're not ready yet to define this power that may be responsible for what we are. So I'm still waiting, but that doesn't mean I don't believe that doesn't exist. I just don't buy the description of it. That's all. The only difference between you and me and every religious person on the planet. The rest of it, we invented. We invented the funny hats and the robes and the books and the stories. Question I was asked the other day, but what about antioxidants? Zebanon, how you doing, my friend? All right, I'll answer that one. Antioxidants become almost unnecessary when your body isn't full of oxidants. That's why we don't eat a lot of vitamin C. Very small amounts. That's why when you're eating the right diet, you don't have a lot of oxidative stress, because you're not eating the things that are causing the inflammation. You're not eating the seed oils. You're not eating the sugars. And we don't need any more antioxidants than our normal immune system that takes care of what was the normal amount of this stuff, until we started poisoning ourselves with things that are very oxidative, like oxalates. Yeah, you eat a lot of oxalates, you eat a lot of spinach, you need to take antioxidants. But the diet that we're on doesn't generate all of these what they call free radicals and oxidative particles and our normal chemistry. Our ancestors never had a drugstore. They never had antioxidant pills. It's in the meat. The only thing that I think I think the only thing that we need to take is maybe a little iodine. I like Ken Berry's take on that. Maybe some electrolytes if you're not getting them in your food. But that's it. I don't think we need other magic pills. They keep coming up with them, and most of those are just something to sell us. So I'm going to stop answering questions now. Popeye promoted spinach. Yeah, Popeye, it was his fault. Another fantasy. Anyway, guys, I'm tired. I think we all should take the rest of the day off. I will see you on Thursday night in the private group. See you all next Tuesday. Probably make some kind of video or other tomorrow. Get back in the kitchen and maybe cook something. So we'll see. Again, take the rest of the day off, my friends. Thanks for coming. And always, eat meat.